Hey guys, so my name's Phil. Obviously, I met these guys because I came in and did a course with them a while ago and sort of just saw that they had an interest in to get into some of this side of stuff, but didn't really have a way to go forwards. And Thailand is somewhere that I've been going over to recently, doing some training, teaching courses, and I figured it would fit perfectly into the bill. The reasons why we'll get into a bit later. What I wanted to do as part of the presentation is just go in a couple of stages, run through cave diving and why do it. I don't know how many of you guys have done any, obviously you've got interest in it, you've seen a bit of news about it. Just wanted to run through some of the basic forms of it, types of caves, just ever so quickly, bit of brief history, and then get into the actual cave diver training side of things. The type of gear you're going to need for it, and then move on to the actual trip information at the end there. Okay. Definition of cave diving, something to have a quick look at. Reasons for actually doing it. One of them is obviously beauty. Sam's already talked about the fact that they've been putting up lots of nice photos on Facebook just to tempt and tease you in. That's just the tip of the iceberg. They're just some of the sections. The great thing about cave diving is you go around the corner and there's something that's even more fabulous. I guess it's true with reef diving. Nowadays I tend to find that where's the line?
We're in a cave.
I tend to find that for me it's what's around the next corner. A lot of the caves that you go to have existing line, but there's still plenty of places out there that don't have line laid in them, and there's a whole feeling of exploration. One of the main reasons, or a big reason why people go into caves, particularly in the States, is the hydrology and geology. There's a lot of study. Obviously, when we use water, it basically goes down into the ground, it trickles and percolates through. Thank God it does, because that's how a lot of the caves get formed in the first place. But more importantly, by studying the water that's transferring itself around underground, you'll actually get some sort of idea of conservation and water supplies for the future. In particular, Thailand, the place that we go to, it's actually part of a dam that they've made for generating of electricity and also water supply for Krabi. Okay, I already touched briefly on the exploration side of things. I've been diving for a fair while, certainly cave diving, and to date I've only found 2 particular spots where I've actually managed to lay virgin line in areas that I know absolutely no one has ever been before. And in the whole of my diving life, there's nothing that's given me such a buzz. To actually go into a place that no one has ever seen before, it doesn't matter how tight or squeezy it is or how big and open, just to go somewhere that no one's ever been before is quite a kick. Even just dive trips like the one that we're going to go off and do, you'll find that there's reasonably challenging logistics. You guys won't be involved too much in it, but what it does do is add a whole sense of adventure to the proceedings. And the last reason people go there is science and research. So just to move on quickly, have a quick look. Wikipedia says cave diving is a type of technical diving in which specialised equipment is used to enable the exploration of caves which are at least partially filled with water. In the UK, this was always an extension of the common sport of caving, and in the US it was pretty much an extension of scuba diving. A lot of the sites where cave diving happens in Florida originated as open water training sites. They're basically big open springs, and they teach open water, advanced open water courses in the open springs at the top. It's only once you get down and into the caverns and cave system that there's a whole different world out there. In Australia, cave diving basically took on both of those facets. Up at Jenolan, you guys been up to Jenolan and crawled around in the caves up there? Okay, so that's basically the sump side of things that was happening in the UK, and they actually, when Australian cave diving sort of took off, they invited Rob Palmer, who was one of the specialists from the UK, to come out and actually do training for them because the techniques were so similar. And the other side of things, places like Mount Gambier, very much like the American style diving where you just drive up in a car and roll your gear into the water, which to me is more like puddle diving. It's not really what I think of as cave diving because it doesn't have any of the exploration or the logistics side to it. Alrighty, hopefully some of you guys have seen this shot on the Facebook stuff going backwards and forwards. Copyright Wes Skiles, unfortunately he's no longer with us, but this was from a National Geographic expedition to Dan's Cave in the Bahamas. absolutely stunning. They call this one, I think, the Forest of Fanghorn. Any of you, I think, is that Lord of the Rings? Lord of the Rings link. But just absolutely stunning. These things just go from the floor all the way to the ceiling, all the way through. You can see the line where, unfortunately, there's been a bit of damage as they've moved backwards and forwards, and that's where the line goes. You basically can't explore to the sides because it's just these beautiful formations. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's one of the main passages that everyone travels through. You start going off into side passages and it's just knock your socks off beautiful. Okay, this shot was copyright for Damien Seviero. This is actually Florida. When the floods occur in Florida, the water reverses and the springs are no longer pushing out as hard as they were, and you actually get river water coming into the top of the springs. And you basically get this brackish, tannin-filled water that comes in and sits on top of the fresh water that's being pumped out of the springs, and you get this beautiful orange glow highlighted by the sun behind it. Only happens, I think it's October time this occurs. It's just when they get backwashed from the main rivers. Alrighty, exploration and challenging logistics. Well, this is actually an Australian cave trip. When I say challenging logistics, that's the dry section where you've got another 300-400 metres of walking to get down to the water's edge, and you can see just about up at the top of the cave the guy with the rope lowering all the gear down, and that's just the start before you even start moving the gear down, and that was after 3 days of driving to actually get there. Okay, so that kind of diving's out there, it's all there and available. However, obviously the Thailand side of things is a nice easy introduction to it, and you can go from that point, you can sort of spear off and start doing as mad and crazy as you want. Science terms, these guys, the Rimopedias, were all the rage at one point. There was, I think the longest cave exploration that's now occurred was in Sardinia, and that was actually to go and find one of these guys because it matched a species that they found over in the Bahamas, and they were trying to work out why such disparate locations had exactly the same species, and basically was it the same species. Sounds a little bit geeky and nerdy, but if it means you get to go do some beautiful cave diving just to collect samples for a scientist, why the hell not? Alrighty, so types of cave diving. Sumps is what we have pretty much locally in New South Wales. There's a couple of them. Jenolan Caves has a fair few. The problem there is that access to the sites is limited by national parks, and there's only certain periods you can go there. And the other downside is the fact there's lots and lots of lugging of gear through dry caves before you get anywhere near the water. And then to actually get to the water, you get something fun like this to squeeze through, sometimes actually on a hooker hose because it's full of water at the time when you're pushing through it. So that's sort of sump diving. And then you've got what we're after, which is solution caves. Okay, absolutely beautiful formations, crystal clear water. The caves themselves, these ones have got stalagmites and stalactites, so they were dry at some point in time. Those of you that have been up to Wellington and seen the flow stones and the stalagmites and stalactites, they've given you the explanation of how it all happens. Water dripping down through the limestone, slowly builds up. Well, the caves here have been dry, then they've been wet, then they've been dry. The great thing about where we're going in over in Thailand, and it's an absolute fluke that they're actually there and diveable, is that originally it was hillside. They were dry caves right up in the valley side. It's only because they dammed the site to actually collect water and to make electricity that they're now underwater caves. So they've got some of the most beautiful, stunning cave formations that I've seen anywhere. Absolutely stunning. And yet they're dead easy to get into. That's why this is such an absolute corker. Other types of things, mines, there's a few of those around the Blue Mountains that we go out and dive in. Tend to be a bit more scary and a bit more unstable. Not necessarily the nicest place to go. And as Jackie was, where's he gone? Jackie was talking about ice caves. Absolutely beautiful, stunning, moving features that change and flow with the currents. Blue holes, there's actually a bunch of these off of Cairns. There was an expedition 3 years ago to go up and dive them, and they managed to get into a few of them. The most famous ones are probably down in Andros in the Bahamas. Absolutely stunning, drop down to 200 odd metres, tunnels going off through the sidewalls. You can drop down in brackish fresh water and then come out in beautiful salt water. Quite amazing. And the other types of things, you've got sea caves. So that shot, any of you guys that have been down to JB and dive Cathedral Cave? Yeah? No? Man, you guys have got to go do it, it's beautiful. Anyway, that one down there is just near the entrance of the Cathedral Cave. Alrighty, very, very brief history of cave diving, don't want to dwell on it too much, but gives you a bit of an idea. Crazy idiots that first decided they were going to go and look underwater in caves. This guy over in France, 23 metres into the cave, so not 23 metres down, 23 metres of physical distance. You imagine he's actually walking along the bottom with boots on and a hose that's supplying his gas. And just insane, absolutely crazy. Thank God they did it, because otherwise we'd never have got on to doing it. In the early 1900s, that was when it really kicked off in the UK. Again, it was sump diving. The shot in the bottom left corner is a modern diver, but it gives you an idea of the type of stuff that they're squeezing through. It's all fairly small. And for those of you that are into the whole side mounting thing that Abyss have been teaching a whole bunch of recently, this is basically where it came from originally. The States caught up a little bit later on, but the origins of it was strapping 2 little baby tanks on under your armpits to go sump diving in the Mendip Hills in the UK. Basically moved on from that. They actually did sump diving, and then they got to some areas where the very first trimix dives. A guy called Rob Palmer from the UK was the first trimix cave diver around the world, rapidly followed by a bloke called Sheck Exley over in the States. Just to give you an idea of the equipment that they were using back then, the can that he's got attached to him at the back is basically his buoyancy device. They had a couple of different versions that they used. One was jugs, and they used to tie a jug to the cylinder at the back, and they'd basically pull it down, blow some gas into it, and then off they go. So they're going inside caves